Well, after that opening, which I hope I'll be able to look at on the website again, I just hope that I can keep the tempo going. I have got 10 minutes today, and in those 10 minutes, I'm going to offer you a framework for thinking about and discussing the topic rights and responsibilities of the individual. I'll make a preliminary observation about the title of the topic that has been assigned to me, and then I'm going to give you some thoughts about 4 categories of rights and responsibilities, and I'm going to end just to sort of illustrate the type of thinking that I've been outlining by referring to 3 issues on which Singapore is often regarded as out of step with modern thinking about rights. My preliminary observation is that the title of the topic already takes us some way into the issue. The phrase, rights and responsibilities of the individual, and especially those last 2 words, the individual, already takes us in terms of political philosophy at least as far as the European Enlightenment and possibly all the way up to the end of the Second World War, the establishment of the UN and the promulgation of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948. It tells us already that the individual is the start and the end of political discussion. We don't need to, at this stage, start refuting arguments that power is delegated downward, that there's a mandate from heaven down to the ruler and from the ruler to his provincial governors, and then they exercise power over the people. We already understand from the topic that individuals are the starting point and that they transfer power to rulers, so that government must be accountable to the people through constitutional mechanisms and must be subject to change by the people, who are then the ending point of the discussion. The other aspect of the phrase is that it assumes equality, the individual. It is not the property-owning individual. It is not the white individual. It is not the male individual. It is just the individual. And so in this phrase already, we have already got past any sense or any attempt to establish an elite. We're past all that business of some having more rights than others, and we don't need to discuss or justify the proposition that all individuals will have the same political rights and responsibilities regardless of race, sex, or class. So with that out of the way, that preliminary observation out of the way, we can now turn to consider what rights and responsibilities the individual has or should have. And let me make this point here. You understand at once that discussion can always be at 2 different levels. It can be descriptive or prescriptive. We can be talking about what are the rights and responsibilities of individuals here today in the world as it is. That requires describing an actual state of affairs. Or it could be a slightly different, a completely different question: what should be the rights and responsibilities of individuals? What should be? And that requires prescribing a desired or ideal state of affairs. And probably in your discussions you need to do both. Rights and responsibilities do go together. It's often said that the corollary of a right is responsibility. But we should think a little bit about what responsibility, what content, what nature, structural nature of responsibility is the corollary of a particular right. For example, if we say that freedom of expression is a right, but that right should be exercised responsibly, we need to be careful what we mean by that. What do we mean by the responsibility part? Is that requirement itself a legal one, or is it just a matter of moral suasion, something you should do as a matter of good practice? If responsibility is a legal obligation, then effectively you're setting the limits to freedom of speech. The responsibilities that you impose then cut down on the scope or ambit of the right that you're correlating it to. If critical speech, for example, any speech that criticizes the king, say, is considered to be irresponsible speech, and that irresponsibility is considered to be a matter of legal sanction, then you have effectively eliminated freedom of speech about the king. However, if you say that responsibility is a matter of good practice rather than of law, something that just comes from inside you, then the effect is very different. And thus, if you understand it in that way, we can easily see that free journalism includes both responsible and irresponsible journalism. And in fact, you couldn't have responsible journalism without the potential for irresponsible journalism existing. So be careful of arguments that start with moral responsibility. It would be a good thing if, and end up with imposing limits or restrictions as a matter of law. And the real principle, probably, is that freedom includes the right to be irresponsible, to make what others might consider mistakes. And the whole point about rights is they trump other considerations. I saw on the web portal a moment ago the use of the word balance, and you may want to think about this. Is balance the right metaphor to be using when we talk about rights? Probably not, but of course, that's for you to think about. But the whole point about rights for rights-based practitioners is that they trump other considerations, like the trumps in a pack of cards. If you have the trump card of a right, it overrides other social or political considerations. It trumps economic efficiency or social effectiveness. So, for example, if we agree that people have a right not to be imprisoned except by due process of law, then it's no justification for picking people up in the street and locking them away on the basis that they're suspected criminals, that doing so will sharply reduce the crime rate. That just is not a justification for overriding a right. The right not to be imprisoned except on due process of law trumps the other consideration of reducing the crime rate.